Matt Montegrosso here with Shively Church of Christ. Today let's talk about the role of a Christian in regarding civics. What's a responsibility of a Christian to vote, to be active and engaged in politics? What does the Bible say about these topics? So first things first, over in 1 Timothy chapter 2, starting in verses 1, it says, I urge then, first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. So here we see that a Christian should be actively praying for their country, should be praying for those in authority, those in positions of power, praying that they have a good heart, praying that they make good decisions, pray that their nation is successful and prosperous. This is something that every Christian should be doing, no matter who's in power, whether it's the party you support or not. Now over in Matthew chapter 22, we see Jesus asked about an imperial tax, whether or not they should be paying a tax to Caesar. And Jesus' response here is in verses 21, he said to them, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's. So God expects us to pay taxes and to be a good citizen in whatever nation we find ourselves living in. We further see this point made over in Romans. In Romans 13, starting in verses 1, it says, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. A few verses down from that, in verses 5, it goes on to say, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. So Christians are supposed to have a respect for authority. They're supposed to be living quiet and peaceful lives as much as they can. They're supposed to be good citizens in the nation that they live in. Ultimately, though, we answer to God. God is the ultimate authority, even above an emperor, even above a president, even above a king. Over in Acts chapter 5, we see Peter and the other apostles, they're brought before authority figures because they're not listening to what they're told to do. They're told to stop preaching the gospel, to stop talking about Jesus to people, and they're ignoring that. They're still doing it. And so when they're brought before the authorities, we see here in verses 29 of chapter 5, it says, Peter and the other apostles replied, we must obey God rather than human beings. The point is, God is the ultimate authority, and so we are to follow the laws and rules of man so long as they don't interfere with the laws and rules of God. And if those things are ever in conflict with each other, we are to obey God rather than men. Now, when we're talking about voting, should a Christian vote? Should they be active in politics, okay? Not just under their authority, but active and engaged in these things. Over in Exodus chapter 18, we see a case where Moses' father-in-law, who was a priest, he actually gives Moses advice about civics, okay? About the way that Israel needed to conduct itself. Starting in verses 19, it says, listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions, and show them the way that they are to live and how they are to behave. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands and hundreds and fifties and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. Now, we are no longer under the old law, right? We're not in Israel, but the principle here still applies to all Christians today. You know, in verses 20 where it says, teach them his decrees and his instructions, show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. This is a responsibility every Christian has, is we're to be letting our light shine. We're supposed to be teaching people about how they should behave, how they should act, what's right, what's God expect, what's God's teachings and instructions and expectations. This is the responsibility of every Christian, right? We are to try to change the culture from the ground up by winning souls over for Christ. And as far as the other part of this goes, selecting capable men from all the people, as much as it's in our power to do so, if we have the ability to vote and select the people that are going to be in charge of our communities or in charge of our government, then we need to be active in that and engaged in that and trying to select capable men to lead us, right? It goes on to say here, men that fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain. Now again, because we live in a fallen world, we're always picking between the lesser of two evils anytime we vote, because all men sin, all men are fallible, okay? But as much as you can, vote for the lesser of two evils, vote for the people that put God first, vote for the people that are the most honest, the most trustworthy. This is the way that we can help guide the country to be in a better place than it was before. Now, shame on us as Christians if we're not being active in the government in whatever way that we can, if we're not being active in our communities, if we're not being active in our families, in our homes, or even in the church. We're supposed to be active and engaged in all ways that we have as a Christian to try to better the world around us, to let our light shine, and to be a positive influence to whatever capacity we can be. Over in Proverbs 24, it says, in verse 11, rescue those being led away to death, hold back those staggering towards slaughter. If you say, but we knew nothing about this, does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? Does not he who guards your life know it? Will he not repay everyone according to what they have done? The idea of pleading ignorance of, well, you know what, I just wasn't that informed, that is not an excuse. And God will judge each of us for what we allowed to happen, what we were apathetic towards. Did we just sit back and just be disengaged from politics, from what was going on around us in life, and say, you know what, that's not my problem. You know what, that's not something I'm interested in. And I could care less who runs this country. The problem is when good men stay home, when good men aren't out voting, then ultimately that just means the evil people are, okay? The wicked people are. And that just means you're going to get wicked leadership. And we as Christians cannot allow that. If we have the opportunity to vote good, trustworthy men into offices and positions, then we need to be actively engaged in doing so. And to not do that is to actually heap up judgment on ourselves, because we're going to have to give an account to God about that. Over in Proverbs chapter 29, verses 2, it says, when the righteous thrive, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people groan. Now, we don't want to live in a society where people are groaning, where people are miserable. We want to live in a society where people can be prosperous and successful and happy in so much as they can. And so, again, by us not being engaged, we're ultimately making our country go downhill. Over in Matthew chapter 25, we have the parable of the bags of talent. The servant that buried his talent, that didn't put it to work, that didn't try to make anything of it or do anything with it, that servant is punished because he is considered to be cowardly and unfaithful. Whereas the others that got to work with what they had to work with and did what they could to try to make it prosperous and to make it grow and to be productive with it, that the Lord rewarded those. Okay? And here in verses 29, it says, for whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The point of the story, right, is to show us that when God gives us a talent or an ability or a gift, He expects us to use that in a way that will better people around us, that will better ourselves, that will better our nation, that will better the kingdom of heaven. Whatever way we can to make it grow, to make it prosper, to make it productive and useful and helpful, we are to be putting our talents and our gifts and our blessings to work for God and for our fellow man. And unfortunately, if we're out there just not voting, not being engaged, not participating in the civics that we have a responsibility to as citizens, then we're burying our talent.